Walking through Mac Miller's life is both beautiful and horrifying. The darkest corners of his 26 short-lived years were so well documented throughout his journey because he's always had this creative outlet to channel his emotions, through writing, recording, and producing music. There were many instances in Mac's career where he didn't think that he'd make it, specifically in the 2013 era. He had a lot to prove. Being perceived as that frat rap artist and being placed in a publicly imposed shell was a very difficult hole that he had to get out of. Mac's come up was through Kids and Blue Slide Park. I love both in their own way, but it was nothing but an introduction to him as an artist. Our greatest insight into this dark time was from Mac's recording studio, dubbed as the Red Room. The Red Room was where he'd make the infamous and debatably greatest mixtape of all time, Faces. A 20-plus track psychedelic experience bringing us to the pinnacle of his addiction, all while exploring life, death, and the struggles in between. The sound and subject matter found in Faces was only really seen in Watching Movies with the Sound Off, his fourth studio album, which served as a soft opening to who Mac would become. To our knowledge, there wasn't much other than a few unreleased tracks between Watching Movies with the Sound Off in 2013 and Faces in 2014. But what we did understand from Faces was that it was much more than just an era, but quite a dark hurdle that he had to get through. Around this time, he left Rostrum Records and founded his own label, Remember, dedicated to a friend that passed away. Faces was released independently before Remember signing to a distribution deal with Warner. It was a very in-between stage in his life. Documenting this journey is rather a feat, but to do it on a full-fledged production that was released for free is nothing short of great. But in February of 2020, we would learn that Faces wasn't the only project that was worked on in this stage of despair. In fact, there was a project before Faces. We'd learned that he worked quite heavily on another mixtape called Balloonerism. Balloonerism is a project that was reportedly asked to be released in the case of his passing. The project was made sometime between 2013 and 2014, right before the release of Faces. This project would come along with a very obscure rollout. Hour by hour, fans sat on the website Leak This, waiting for this anonymous user to post more music from this mixtape. Over the few weeks, we received various cryptic messages, along with 16 tracks. Amongst this rollout, fans would discover a commissioned image, which was presumably the album cover for Balloonerism. The actual title of the album was discovered within the metadata of the tracks. We are introduced to the album with Tambourine Dream, which is nothing but a tambourine, a subtle introduction to how deep this album will go. The next track is titled The Song That Changed Everything. This song begins with an uncomfortable strain of chords. The artists in the room speak about the notes that they're playing, making you feel like you're in the room. It features beautiful harmonizations from SZA, while at the same time it is quite psychedelic, and feels like an ascension, leading up to something huge, or a come-up. After the build-up, it sounds like one is wandering around a circus or county fair. SZA takes hold of most of this track, as Mac's vocals are only in the intro and outro. The chorus in Do You Have a Destination mimics the track Funeral off of Faces. A key part in the track is not just the loopy lyricism that contemplates ending his existence, but rather the tease of delusional Thomas. This higher-pitched voice in the track shows his crutch on drugs at the time. We're only into track 4 and Mac is talking about bodies already, hence the pessimistic title of Deborah Downer. The entire song includes a lot of drug talk. Pills turn into powder, just like how the world comes crashing down to ash. One of his friends leaves home and never comes back due to drug use, referenced through the rolled bill. The song fades out slowly into a woman ordering Mac more drugs, even though he was looking to clean himself up in the previous verse. My first reaction to Stone was that the guitar riff reminds me of Grand Finale, the initial final track from Faces. The production is honestly phenomenal, and it sounds so full and complete. The song itself is a ballad to a broken woman, someone that nobody understands but Mac, who continuously tries to be a part of her life. At the end of the day, one of the few people that she can trust is Malcolm. Stoned is his perspective of someone's life that is closed to the world. Colors and Shapes found its full release in Faces. The OG version is clearly less full in sound. with both missing sounds and pauses from the Faces version. Going back to my previous analysis of Faces, Colors and Shapes looks at the struggle of getting outside the mind through psychedelics. This is proven through the opening sample of the track How Do You Get Out of Your Mind? The LSD Crisis, a documentary from 1966. Excelsior is the most eerie song on the project so far. We once again see the light of Delusional Thomas. Mac himself stated that this disturbing character doesn't really have a profound backstory, but it definitely involves a whole thought process, and using Delusional Thomas has been rather therapeutic for him. It felt good for him to talk about these sadistic urges that he states everyone has but doesn't want to say. Delusional Thomas is his medium to express these sadistic urges, which is seen quite greatly through this song. The production is sinister, sampling a playground while talking about the distraught minds and traumas of kids in the park. In the middle of the track, Max states, "What happened to apple juice and cartwheels?" which is his way of saying, "Where did the time go?" Preceded by the sound of someone falling, presumably Mac, into his Delusional Thomas persona, followed by an outro filled with children in the playground. The meaning of the track name, Excelsior, translates to higher. It also serves as an allusion to Henry Longfellow's poem of the same name, which is about doomed idealism. When Mac looks at this playground in the perspective of Delusional Thomas, he sees a doomed future. He misses his innocence. But as he looks at these children, all that he can think of is the doom of their future. Fallen for her hallucinations, what's love without imagination, is what Mac and SZA harmonize on the chorus. This track covers the question of what's real love versus reality. Mac knows his position on the subject, stating that it's only real if it's real to you. Essentially stating, don't let others dictate what is real to you. Mac highlights that hallucinations can not only come from drugs but love, idealized relationships, and one's daydreams. It's an early glimpse into the sound of the Divine Feminine, and I think that it would fit great in a deluxe version of that album. Funny Papers takes the perspective of one reading a local newspaper, reminiscing on the lives that he never knew. He begins with the perspective of a banker, recently divorced, who drove off a bridge to his wedding song. He feels empathetic with this person, as he misses somebody as well. In the second verse, he talks about a newborn baby, questioning himself, why would a mother want to bring this child into this awfully harsh world? He ends the third verse by saying, I'm not an innovator, just an illustrator. Although he can beautifully paint these problems through his writing, he doesn't have the skill to solve these problems. This song shows a brief realization of everything going on in this world. Mac highlights 3 brief stories that are happening amongst the millions of new ones that happen each day. There's some sort of magic wand sampled throughout Mannequins, amongst the buildup that mimics a chase. He is afraid of losing himself and who he was, a common theme in your 20s. He specifically states this by saying, I've always been terrified of ending up normal, further stating, scared you're gonna wake up as someone who isn't you. He's not afraid of getting old or dying, because he believes that's where the answer lives, or the time you'll know yourself the most. I feel like these themes are present because of Dylan Reynolds, Mac's lifelong friend that features on the track. His friend triggers the idea of change through growth and finding oneself, but at the same time, he wants to make sure he doesn't wake up as someone who isn't him. Sleep is a very common topic in Mac's career. Whether it's experimenting with new drugs, touring in new time zones, or simply being hurt, comes with the lack of being able to sleep. Sleep is seen as relaxation, turning your mind off and escaping reality, which is probably the only time Mac actually feels normal. He reflects on a time that a girl took a plane to Cali to go see him, but she didn't really see him. He was so gone that he hasn't seen himself in a week or so. By finally sleeping, he would have been able to be himself and give this girl his all. Sleeping would give him the time to rejuvenate, while also giving a break from his substance abuse. We are once again welcomed by the haunting act of Delusional Thomas. It is important to note that this character hasn't shown up this frequently in any other album, other than the dedicated self-titled mixtape, Delusional Thomas. It has a typical sporadic Delusional Thomas verse, over a horrorcore-like beat. It always seems like Mac has a new way to introduce Delusional Thomas. Specifically on this track, he raps the first 4 bars, interrupts himself, and reinstates the verse from the top. This symbolizes the full transition of Mac Miller to Delusional Thomas. The 13th track is an original version of Uber, which was fully realized and finished on Faces. It holds a fantasy-like setting of the mind wandering off into a hallucinogenic world. The same goes with the next piece, Smile, which did not end up on Faces, but instead Run On Sentences Volume 2. Although the lyrical content shares similarities with other tracks, I am glad that it was finished and put onto an officially released tape. Throughout Smile, he proclaims that he just wants to be free and let go of the restraint that he deals with each day from his own mental health. A common but very important theme throughout his career. As we start approaching the end of the project, we are brought forward one of the most beautiful tracks from Malcolm's entire career. What makes this song stand out to me is that it shows how capable he is of making such an obscure long track, yet it's still so engaging to the listener. The song is nearly 12 minutes and it's filled with the pondering idea of death, and if those who are dead dream just like we do. In a conversation with God, he states, "You wonder when God will just listen and give you a break," with a reply in the distance stating, "See, living and dying are one and the same," as the track falls into the rhetorical chorus. In their leaked tracklist, track 16, Bob's Dementia, is stated as the final song in the project. Mac collaborates with Odd Future's Haji. Left Brain and Haji had a group named Mellow Hype, which carries a very similar sound to this track. It's dark and delusional, exploring a faded idea of introspection due to a deteriorated mind. Although the official tracklist ends with Bob's Dementia, Mac's DJ, Clockwork, stated that $5 Pony Rides was meant to be on the album. Fans speculate that this song could have been used to promote the album separately, like the song Buttons for Swimming. In my opinion, $5 Pony Rides definitely fits the tone of the highs and lows found within Balloonerism. It is a very upbeat song with the topic of love. Once again, I get a pretty strong sense of the beginnings of Divine Feminine in this track, or his alter ego, Larry Lovestein. He wants to give this girl a pony, one that she was never given to in her childhood. It reminds me of the man that he wants to be and he finally sleeps. $5 Pony Rides is the closest Mac is to his true self. This beautiful but very dark Pre-Faces album may have never been finished, but Balloonerism has a lot to offer. I think that there's more than enough within the album to be released officially in the future, if that's what his family and label decide to do. Balloonerism provides themes that Faces didn't touch on. It felt like a different stage of grief, a stage of cold and dark sadness. But at the same time, it provided the introductory experiential sound that was needed so Faces could be released. I strongly believe that Balloonerism walked so Faces could run, and it's a project that I recommend to anyone who's had a liking of Mac Miller at some time in their life. Now I want to hear from you guys. What is your favorite track off Balloonerism and why? Also, do you think Balloonerism will ever get an official release? Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time.